Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Mom Mode. On this episode, we have Dr. Shannyn Pearce, who I am so excited to talk to and just really excited to spread this message. Dr. Shannyn Pearce was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr. A lot of you may not know what Epstein-Barr is, but is also something that I had been diagnosed with about a year ago. And when I came across Dr. Shannon's profile, her Instagram, she shares a wealth of knowledge around Epstein-Barr and how she was able to get to her root cause of a lot of different, I guess, what would we call it? A lot of different, like
It's like
symptoms.
the mystery symptoms, right?
Symptoms?
Like the
Yeah,
thing with
mystery symptoms.
Epstein-Barr,
I'm like, I don't
the
even know how to
weird.
categorize this.
Yeah, yeah.
Mystery symptoms, and how she was able to get to the root cause of what those mystery symptoms actually were, and then how she was able to get Epstein-Barr into remission. And like I said, there's so many people who don't know about Epstein-Barr. I never even knew Epstein-Barr existed before being diagnosed with it. So I'm just so excited to have Dr. Shannyn here, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yes, I love that you share my passion for this because I do feel like it's one of those things that so few people, one, either know about, and even if they do, they don't fully understand it. Like there is so much
Yeah.
misinformation and bad information. And I really believe this is the thing that is keeping a lot of, especially women, definitely moms, stuck in their health because they don't know that it's a really big deal. And I know that's part of your story, and that was mine. Like I had no idea that Epstein-Barr is my root cause for a
Yeah.
very long time. Like I struggled with my health my entire life. It's why I became a doctor. But I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia when I was 11 years old because I was having migraine headaches. I was having weird joint pain. I was having bloating and all these just symptoms that nobody could figure out, right? And all the tests were coming back normal and the MRIs came back normal. So finally at 11 years old, I had a neurologist tell me that the pain was all in my head and that was called fibromyalgia, and I was going to deal with it the rest of my life. Literally, this man said, like, you'll get good at managing the pain, but you're going to have fibromyalgia forever. So I really thought that was my lot in life, right? So I started
Hmm.
learning more about holistic medicine. I started learning about more natural ways to, help manage my pain because that's what I was told, which brought me to why I wanted to be a doctor. And even through all of that, I found things that made me feel like a little bit better, but I could never remember a day I actually just felt healthy, right? Start to finish.
Yeah.
Like even with all of that, I didn't know. I just knew I had fibromyalgia. I was really good. I was great at nutrition. I exercised. I took all the right supplements. Like I did everything that you're supposed to do to be a healthy person. And it worked for a little bit. And then I had my first baby. And that's when all of this finally came to a head for me. I had a huge health crash. My son is 11. So 11 years ago, I had him. And literally 2 weeks later, I thought I was dying. Like, I really thought, I was like, I have an autoimmune disease. Like, something's happening. Like, I thought for sure I had cancer. Like, I was non functional. And at this point, I was already a doctor. So, like, I'm thinking to myself, if somebody came to me with these symptoms, what would I tell them? Right. So I went through
Yeah.
the regular route of things that I would normally do. And it wasn't working. Right. Like I wasn't getting better. I kept getting worse. I started developing like unbearable anxiety for no reason, like panic attacks that were not warranted for the situation. I was having debilitating fatigue, pain all over my body. My hands would hurt so bad. I couldn't even pick up my newborn baby for the first several hours of the day because my hands hurt so bad. And people just kept telling me, I went to other doctors, I went for help. Oh, you're a new mom. Oh, you're stressed. Oh, you went back to work too soon. Like all the things that like people just tell you when they can't figure it out. Oh, your
Yeah.
fibromyalgia is flaring. But none of that sat well with me, right? It's like, no, there's something else. And I think if anyone listening has had a situation like that, like I think in your soul when like something's really wrong versus like I
Yeah.
wasn't just new mom tired. I wasn't just like not feeling great. Like I knew something was wrong. I just
Hmm.
couldn't figure out what it was. And honestly, we started researching just outside of the box 11 years ago. This was not like nobody talked about Epstein-Barr. Nobody was doing a whole, even functional medicine was just kind of new at that point, right? It wasn't as
Yeah.
mainstream as it is now. So there was no resources. Like we just started going, I say we, my husband and I work together, and we just started like going through anything, any information, any research studies, any things that we get our hands on, trying to figure out why I felt so bad. And honestly, the only way I stumbled upon Epstein-Barr is I went and I was like, I want to test everything under the sun. I was like, I don't know what it is. I want to see all the things. So I did, my stool sample, I did my hormone mapping, I did a huge immune panel. Part of that was an Epstein-Barr virus. I didn't even
Yeah.
choose it, to be honest. Like I didn't personally pick to be tested for Epstein-Barr. It was just part of this immune panel at the time. And I had never had mono. So that wasn't even on my radar. I had no thought that that was the problem. So I did all of this testing and it comes back. And it turns out my Epstein-Barr titers were through the roof. Looking back in retrospect, I bet you I had it for the first time when I was 8 or 9 and when all my
Oh
health
my
issues
gosh.
started. I'm sure it was flaring at 11 when I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Like I can see now how that was the catalyst for a lot of my health issues. But
Yep.
I remember opening my labs and seeing that it was positive. Like I just started crying. Like I was so relieved that it was actually something, right? Like I think
Yeah.
there's something about being sick and not having an answer. Um, but I always say it's kind of like the story starts from there because once I knew I had it, it became so very obvious that nobody knows how to manage it properly, right? Like that became my passion is like, crap, I know I have this
Right.
illness, right? I have this chronic virus. It's wreaking havoc on my body. And there were no resources. And I think that's one of the things that just lit me up is like I had to figure it out for myself. I had to go from absolutely no knowledge about Epstein-Barr virus to I always say I'm like an accidental expert. Like I had to figure all this out for myself because there really
Oh,
wasn't.
and for moms who don't know, so it's originated from mono.
Yeah. So Epstein
So,
virus, yeah, is
yep,
the virus that in its acute form causes mono. But
yep.
where we're seeing the research saying for things, so I don't know how much of the science piece you want to go into this, but Epstein-Barr, a chronic Epstein-Barr infection is linked to fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's. It's the number one trigger for Hashimoto's, which is
And
running right
so
now.
many women are being diagnosed with Hashimoto's.
It's
My mom
everywhere.
just got diagnosed with it, and
Yeah.
as my mom, I got diagnosed with it after having my daughter, and, like, my mom it's, like, a topic that she'll, like, bring up to people, and she just talked to me today, she's like, "Why are so many women being diagnosed with Hashimoto's?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm like, "I think it's because we're looking further into things now, to where, like, that's what just like Epstein-Barr." Um, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, there's something that's triggering it. And like, you wonder, like, how many would have Epstein-Barr? Because I was told that like 90% or 95% of people walking around have Epstein-Barr. That does not mean that it's active,
Right.
but they carry it.
Yeah. And I think these are the conversations that are keeping people sick because you'll get two very different sides when you look at chronic Epstein-Barr. You'll get the side who's like, everyone has Epstein-Barr in their system. It's no big deal. As long as it's
Yeah.
not active, like you are fine. And that's not true. We can talk more about that in a second. And then if you Google it or you search it, you can also get some doom and gloom, like you're going to need blood transfers, like you die from this, it causes cancer, which some of that is true, right? I feel like there's a middle, right? It's not either extreme. There's definitely a
Yeah.
middle, but too many people just write it off like no big deal because it is true. Most people have been exposed to Epstein-Barr, the virus, right? Epstein-Barr. It's very common, especially passed around a lot when we're younger. You've probably been exposed to it. What I have learned over the last decade is it has everything to do with the health of the host. Like, why didn't my body get it once, deactivate it, put it into remission, and keep the antibodies at a reasonable level and never let it reactivate, right? Why didn't my
Hmm.
body do that? And in searching deeper, it's because I had a very traumatic childhood. I had a lot of inflammation. I had co-infections that went with it. Like there's just pieces and that's how my flare happened postpartum. A- Any hormone fluctuations can reactivate it. Like there are circumstances that will make somebody have a chronic infection like you and I, and other people, it never bothers them again, right? So just being
Yeah.
exposed doesn't mean you have a chronic infection. But there are so many of us who do, who just kind of get pushed to the side because they don't understand that it's not mono that causes these mystery symptoms. That's the first time you get it. It's the
Yeah.
long-term effects 10, 15, 20 years later that are causing these really serious health issues.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I had no idea why. I just started digging because of my pregnancy complications and wanted to know more. And, going to my regular primary, and that's not that there's anything wrong with a regular primary, but according to those the bloods that they take, I was healthy. You're young, you're healthy, don't worry about it. I was being this, I was the same. I was being pushed away and I'm like you said, I felt something. I'm like, no, there's something more. And like, I've had to battle close family and friends being like, okay, I think you're becoming a little obsessed with this. And I'm like, no, like I want to feel good when I wake up. I don't. I feel like I'm not sleeping. I feel like I'm exhausted when I wake up after 9 hours of sleep. Like this does not feel right. And so, we got to advocate for ourselves. And so for you, obviously, you said you and your husband started really digging into different, blood, all the blood test, the stool sample. Um, when you got that back, what was your next like protocol? Like what did you start to do and what changes did you start to make in order to feel better? And
Yeah.
like when did you really notice that? And I'm sure that was a process because it takes time.
Yeah. And it takes time no matter when you start or what you start with. I feel like for me,
Yeah.
it was extra long and clunky because I didn't know, right? Like I was trying
Yeah.
things and then I would literally have notebooks of like, hey, this worked good and I felt like this and this didn't work at all. So don't do that again. Like I just like was working through it. So it took me a solid 2 years before I really felt like I got my breakthrough. Now, with what we've learned since then, it doesn't have to be that long, but it was definitely
Mhm.
a process. And one of the things I learned by doing it the wrong way is when you have a chronic infection, Epstein-Barr, but also there's other ones, like anyone who has a
Yeah.
chronic immune issue, chronic infections, slow and steady and doing things in the right order matter more than truly what you're doing. So I, for myself, once I had the stack of information, I was like, okay, great. I want to throw everything at killing off the Epstein-Barr. I want to fix my co-infections in my gut. I want to put myself on adrenal support. I want to do stuff for anti-inflammation. I was taking all this stuff and I was doing all this stuff and I crashed. Like my body just couldn't do all the things at once, even though it was tempting,
Mhm.
right? And I get the average person be like, I just want to feel better. I'll do whatever you say. I'm like,
Yeah.
slow and steady. So we really learned over those years, I call it the 6 phases. Like there are lots of things that need to be addressed, but there is a very specific order that works for people who have chronic illnesses and chronic infections. And the first one is minimizing your viral load. That's important. We don't get to where at least the Epstein-Barr is slowing or stopping replicating inside the cells.
Yeah.
Everything else is going to be harder to deal with, right? Like that's step one. But in step one, we want to be minimal with that, right? So using blends of herbs. I actually just in the last year developed my own Epstein-Barr supplement bundle because I was finding it hard to get everything the right source, the right quality, and the right cleanliness of capsule without all the extra stuff and like just the simplicity of knowing what to take. So I think that's really important is knowing it's okay to be minimal, go a little bit slower, and always start with the viral load. I'll get people ask all the time, okay, but I also have Lyme and I also have mold. Yes, all things that need to be addressed, but because
Yep.
the virus is chronic, it stays in your cells and it literally changes the way your immune system reacts. It changes your DNA. That's priority number one. These
Wow.
other things that are more transient, like mold and even Lyme, those can be eradicated from the body where Epstein Barr can't. You have to start there. And then you start piecing in those other pieces. So
Yep.
just I think that's my best advice. Like it's okay to go slower long term. You'll be glad you did, starting with the viral load.
Yeah. Um, as far as Epstein-Barr goes, I mean, I feel like symptoms can look different across the board, right? And that's what's really tricky about it. And it's like, so that's why I'm like, okay, like how does someone go about like you just have to either ask your doctor or go to like a function, I guess go to more of a functional medicine or do you take clients
We
personally?
do, yep. So we have Journey to Wellness is
Okay.
our team that works with a lot of people from all over the country.
Okay.
Um, here's my what I typically instruct people to do, and we're happy to help people get the labs. It's all the links are on my Instagram. If you go to my bio, there's links to labs, there's links to consult calls, all those things. But
Yeah.
here's what I really caution people to do. One, you do have to get the right labs, right?
Yeah.
Most people aren't pulling the right values. So you have 4 titers that have to be tested to know what phase you're in. When people will send me all the time in DMs, they'll send me their labs and ask my opinion. There's almost always missing the early antigen, which is really important to know if you are in a flare or not. So it's a little bit tougher to differentiate what phase, what's going on, even just for timeline, right? If somebody has a positive early antigen, it's going to take a little bit longer than someone who just has some of the other ones positive, or if IgM is positive. They're all
Yeah.
different kind of phases of the virus, right? So it's not important for the average person to fully understand each of them. but you do need all four for someone who's Epstein-Barr knowledgeable to make a good decision about where you are in the infection and then how to proceed from there. So I think the right testing is very important. You can ask your doctor for it. And if you want it to go through insurance, sometimes it can. Just really press in. You want all four markers,
4.
right? Like and a lot of times it's up to the person to make sure that they're pulling those. They're probably not going to pull all four of them unless you really ask for it. So you
Yeah.
could do that. And then from there, it's looking back. So I want to give you just a list of symptoms because they are kind of all over the place, right? Where
Mhm.
I really start getting like the red flags going off that I think it's Epstein-Barr is number one, when symptoms are kind of cyclical or they come and go, especially if you've had them for a long time. So whenever somebody says, like, man, I had like 3 really bad months, and then it goes okay for 6 or 8 weeks. Like I didn't feel great, but it was a little bit better. And then we had the stressful event. And then, oh my God, I just felt like I couldn't recover from it. Like that up and down that you can kind of see in retrospect, like, oh yeah, I've definitely had seasons like that. That's really classic of a virus, right? Like being able to have those times that it's more active and times that it's more dormant. That's a pretty big one.
Mhm.
I think that pain, especially if it moves around the body versus you're like, yes, it's always like my left side low back. But somebody who gets like, there's times that it's really this one spot in my neck, and then other times it's my hand, and then other times I'm just kind of achy all over. Sometimes it feels like my muscles, and sometimes it feels like a nerve pain. Like those weird sensations are almost always a virus because nothing else really replicates that. The way the virus gets in the nerve roots, it kind of sends different pain signals. That to me is
Mhm.
always a like, all right, we should definitely look for viral load for sure. And then any really crazy symptoms. I just posted something today on Instagram, like the weird things Epstein-Barr can do. So things like a vibration sensation where like it feels like my cell phone's vibrating in my pocket, but it's not, right? Like that's a very
Interesting.
weird Epstein-Barr one. Floaters in your eyes. Tinnitus is, I'd say probably 9 out of 10 people who have like tinnitus ringing in their ears. It ends up being Epstein-Barr because it gets in those cranial nerves. Dizziness, like any of those really weird, unexplained symptoms, I really would consider Epstein-Barr, especially if it's paired with things like fatigue, pain, and anxiety. Those are kind of the three like pretty common ones,
Yep.
but then also paired with those weird things like just don't make sense. That's Epstein-Barr.
Wow.
That's
Yeah, like, I feel like that's all stuff too that, like, like, if I have a pain in my neck, it's like, "Oh, like, it's from working out," or "You just strained something," and it's like, it could be misconstrued for nothing when really it is something. And I mean, I would say, like, mine's not fully in remission that I'm aware of, but what they do have me taking, um, I will say that, like, I almost feel like I'm coming back to reality. It's a really weird feeling, and I don't know if you felt that way, like, I feel like I look back and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I was, like, numbed out or, like, just not with it?" And even when people talk about the past, even, like, from a few years ago, and I had gained, like, a lot of weight, and I think mine was affecting me as far as, like, the Hashimoto's, so, like, some thyroid stuff, which, can make you gain weight because your thyroid, acts up, and just weird things. That wasn't normal, and I kept also getting the excuses of like, "Well, you're in your 30s now, your metabolism's not as fast." And I'm like, "No, I don't think you understand. I've never been this much weight, or my body's never been like this." Like, it was really sad and difficult and depressing and, just all the feelings. But when I look back, I'm like, it's almost like I don't remember certain things.
yeah.
It's almost like my brain was that fogged
Yeah.
that, like, I don't and I'm like, "Wow, I feel like," and it's sad to me because you wonder, like, "Okay, maybe I haven't experienced it for years, but there could be people like yourself that might have experienced that for so long
Yeah.
and did not get answers, and, like, you had to fight for those answers for yourself."
I get people, it's been their whole lives. Like I have women come to me in their 60s and they feel like they've never felt good. And that's one of the things I felt like I missed moments. Like I really truly like I
Yeah.
feel like I would sit on the sidelines and like watch my son or watch my husband and my son play and never feel like I could participate. Or if I did it with me for a couple minutes and I just felt so like blah, I just wanted to sit down again. And
Yeah.
one of the things with Epstein-Barr, because it primarily causes, well, it does two things primarily. One is neural inflammation, so when it inflames your nerves, your nerve roots, it can be pain. But for a lot of people, it's cognitive, it's brain fog, it's anxiety, it's depression, because we do actually get inflammation in the brain and in those cranial nerves. So things that we're told, like, oh, it's anxiety or I wonder often there's not enough research for but people who are like bipolar or schizophrenic, it's like how much of that was a virus literally zapping your brain that like it can't function right. And
Yeah.
you're right. When you start to get that under control, I really felt like I came alive again. Like so many years I was just like
Mm.
barely surviving. And then you just feel so much better. And that's when you want everyone to know, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
have to live like that. Like you really don't.
No. And
And
that's how I am right now, and that's why I was so excited when I came across your page because 'cause I'm like, "Oh my gosh." First off, you get it.
yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes you do have like people are like people will laugh, like my family, they'll be like, "Oh, you're Epstein-Barr." And I'm like, "You guys, it's a serious
Yes.
thing."
It
And I'm
really
like, "For all you're walking around with it too, and you don't know." Which brings me to like, are we like when you have an Epstein-Barr flare up or like your Epstein-Barr is active, are we contagious?
For the most part, when someone's really worried about like their kids in the family, for the most part, the answer is no. Remembering again, right, it's health of the host. So with
Yeah.
my kids and my husband, so with the four of us, there's only one, and it's my son because I feel like I was so sick and it took so long. I see signs in him, so I do support him, right? He takes the Epstein-Barr supplements. I keep close eyes on him. We do his testing. Like I'm concerned about him because he is showing symptoms, and I think a lot of it's because he was in like the thick of it with me, right? In those
Yeah.
times versus my husband and my daughter, zero, like absolutely no concern about them at all. And it's how healthy they are. So is it a potential? Yes. Can it be
Yeah.
transferred even in pregnancy? It can. Most people that shouldn't be the case, right? Because they should have been able to fight it off properly the way we couldn't. So I think you just have to watch those people in your life. And if they are showing symptoms, especially in kids, it's things like, more fatigue than they should really have for that age. If you notice that they, the dark circles under the eyes are just looking more drained, those types of things. So I think it's worth looking out for, but I never want people to like live their life in fear of like, I gave it to my whole family and I'm ruining everyone's health. Like you
Yeah.
can go down that rabbit hole very quickly. From the most part, it's not. And also, that's part of why getting all four titers tested is important because there is a circumstance where the answer is yes, you are contagious. And then there's lots of other circumstances where you're not, right? It's chronic to you and you have less risk of passing it on. So, proper labs help with that.
Yeah. So when you have when you're active, like you do the four, teeters and it comes back active, that's when you're in a flare up.
So,
Is
active
that correct?
M versus active early antigen are two different things.
Okay.
IgM is like you think M for mono. M is your
Yep.
acute active when you are most likely to be contagious. Now, some people, most people, right? The average person will get IgM once. That's when you got mono. It will deactivate, and rarely do you go back and do an IgM. But there is circumstances of chronic active IgM. I do see that. So that is a potential, and then you are more at risk of passing it. Early antigen is showing if you're in a flare, right? If it's a
Okay.
current flare. And early antigen, that's where you kind of look at your other numbers and decide if are they high enough that you might be contagious or not. There's just some thought process that goes into that. But typically, even in the early antigen, you're not overly contagious. But what gets missed a lot is just because you don't have an IgM or an early antigen doesn't mean you're in the clear. We look at viral load. The heavier
Okay.
your viral load is, the heavier your numbers are. So this is where your average doctor will tell you it's a past infection and don't worry about it. They're going to look at two specific titers. And again, as a doctor, that's usually the only ones they'll run if they're not EBV literate. And they'll say, oh, those are titers for past infection. You're fine. Well, there's a very big difference in the person whose number is 70 and the number is 750, right? Like those are two very different circumstances. And the higher your number is means the more times the virus has been replicating in your body. So you've probably
Oh.
been under immune stress. You've probably had a couple of different reactivations that maybe you weren't aware of. And now your viral load is so heavy that it's changing the way your immune system, your inflammation, your nervous system is responding. And it's actually those titers specifically, it's the ones that the doctors will say are past infection that the research shows are being found in the thyroid of people with Hashimoto's, in the nerve roots of people with MS, in the muscle tissue of people with fibromyalgia. It's the past infection titers. It's not the current ones. So what we're being told, even by medical professionals, is actually really putting us at risk because those are titers that cause true autoimmune issues and inflammatory issues and nervous system issues. So just teaching people how to properly read the labs, not only just like the average person, but teaching doctors how to properly read these labs so they're not
Yeah.
misdiagnosing people, that alone is a whole hour conversation, right? Like, there's a lot that goes into that. Um,
Yeah,
I always encourage you, like, make sure you find somebody who understands EBV. If you think that's your
for
issue,
sure.
there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, I think everybody should be tested for it, and that, like, seriously upsets me that it's not. And then you also wonder, like, those ones that it's the past infection, is it because we were never treated for mono? Now, I don't know what they like, if I had mono, and I always remember a lot of kids getting it in high school, right? They called it, like, the kissing disease or something like that. And some were like bedridden, and you're like, okay, I don't know what they would use to treat them, but what about the ones like myself or you where we didn't know we had mono?
Yep.
Um, and then we were never treated. You almost wonder, okay, was it because it was never treated that our body didn't properly fight it off? And then it's now just living in our
Yeah.
cells.
Yeah.
Um, it makes me, yeah, I mean, it's obviously I don't have MS. I don't have fibromyalgia, but like I have family members who have and do. And it's just super upsetting because you wonder, could this have been avoided?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like so passionate about it, especially when like as a whole, like there's so many people who are suffering from so many different things.
Yeah.
And you're like, could it be just a little deeper dive
Yeah.
of running something? And I don't know, maybe, it can get to a point where you can't reverse it, right? If you then have MS, I don't know, can you treat it? I don't, it might be past that. But for you, um, so when you had when you were diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I mean, you legitimately had probably fibromyalgia,
Yeah.
correct? But you were able to tackle and reverse that.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I think it's not that people don't have whatever condition they're probably being told they have. It's that
Yeah.
they give you a diagnosis and they think that's the end of the line, right? Oh, you have MS or you have Hashimoto's. That's not the end of the line. That's the start, right? It's like I have this
Yeah,
condition, what caused it? So yes, I truly had fibromyalgia, but caused by Epstein-Barr. And when that calmed down, things can get better. And again, not you can't promise that everyone reverses their autoimmune disease,
for
but
sure.
can it get a whole lot better? Can you get more quality of life? Can you reduce your risk of this becoming more progressive? Like sometimes those are the decisions, right? Is like, let's at
Yeah,
least stop progression. Let's see if we can get quality of life back. And that I believe is very possible for most people, right? As long as they are doing the right things. But yeah, there's just so many people who have this, especially autoimmune. It's everywhere
it's
now. I don't
everywhere.
remember as a kid, nobody had an autoimmune condition. Now it's like I think in women it's like 1 in 12 or something crazy. Like it's everywhere. And
Yeah,
it's an immune system issue. Now, not only Epstein-Barr, obviously, but I am seeing that as one of the most missed culprits, right? So there
yeah.
are other like certain parasites can cause it, certain infections in the gut, like that is all relevant also. But I just think Epstein-Barr is being missed so much. More people are talking about those other things and they're forgetting this huge viral load piece. And that also goes for things like people think having cold sores are no big deal. A chronic HSV infection in your body for life has similar long term effects as EBV. So, herpes viruses, EBV, shingles, and now we have to lump in long COVID, like they have very similar effects on the immune system. And all of those are playing in to how just prevalent immune issues are.
You know what's interesting with long COVID? I mean, what are they calling like what is long COVID? Like from your perspective of what you know, like what is it when someone says like, "Oh, you have long COVID," or when they just bring up long COVID, like what is long COVID? Because I've been hearing this and I'm like, I swear after COVID is when all of my symptoms started. Like
100%.
wild. I had it really bad in 2021. Lost my taste, lost my smell, all of that. Respiratory. I have asthma. Never had to use my inhaler. When I had COVID, had to use my inhaler. I have had to periodically use my inhaler ever since.
Yep.
Which is wild to me. And then this is when all of like the weight gain, like anything you can think of that would could be a symptom attached to Epstein-Barr, then getting Hashimoto's was after COVID. So what is long COVID?
Mhm. I really believe long COVID is the people whose COVID reactivated their Epstein-Barr because we know other viruses reactivate viruses. They kind of co-go together. So the person who has COVID, it reactivates Epstein-Barr. COVID goes away a little bit faster than Epstein-Barr does. So then you're lingering in this Epstein-Barr flare and they're calling it COVID, but nobody's looking for Epstein-Barr. And even when they call it long COVID, if they would even properly manage that, it would help the Epstein-Barr a little bit, but they're not, right? They're just putting them into this kind of box of like, "Oh, you're gonna feel that for a while, like, sorry about that." But I think for a lot of people and people that we have tested that was my
Yeah.
philosophy has been pretty spot on that they were in an early antigen for their if they have long COVID, they come with those symptoms, a lot of those people end up with a positive early antigen for Epstein-Barr.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together until, like I said, that I had mine, and then, I hear long COVID, and I'm like, as soon as I hear COVID, I'm like, that's when all of this started for me. Like, and I go back and I look at photos. I look at, like, my life, the energy levels that I had. Everything changed after that.
Yeah.
Um, and, it wasn't just because the world was shut down and, all this stuff. No, it was actually my health, and my inhaler was like a huge deal. I was like, wait, I haven't had to use an inhaler in years.
Yeah.
So for me to have to go get one and now carry it on me is wild. Um, as far as like now, how often would you say that you go into like a flare, and how do you handle those flares? Like, how do you one, how do you know you have the flare up? And then two, like, how do you manage it?
I think it's probably one of the most important things I have to teach people with Epstein-Barr because the name of the game, right? It is a chronic virus. You are going to have it. I still have it, right? It doesn't leave the body. But the better you get at the quicker you can identify your flares, know your triggers. I know my triggers very well, and then know exactly what to do as quickly as possible. You can manage it where you don't live in fear of flares. So early on, I would say I probably got a flare even after I was starting to do some protocols and stuff. I still had a flare every 3 to 4 months. Like my body took a long time to calm down. I got better and better at knowing what to do and how to do it so quickly that now I can go years and it's always something that triggers it. So the most common triggers, these are what I know for me. Hormone fluctuation. So I went on to have more babies and going through perimenopause right now, like all the things, right? I know in those seasons, I'm just ahead of it. If it's a stressful season, if we have a lot of stuff going on, if it's really busy, if we're traveling, anything that I know is going to put pressure on my body, I will go back and put myself through the steps that I'll talk about in just a second to support my Epstein-Barr. So know your environment, right? Know when there's
Mhm.
extra stuff going on that needs you to support your immune system. If you can do that ahead of time, you're going to minimize your risk of flare for sure. From there, know your flare symptoms. And everyone's is different. And this is one of the things I like working with people on because when they start light bulb moment, like, oh, that's my flare symptom. It's like a really fun day to figure out what that
Mhm.
is. For me personally, I have three things that only happen when it's Epstein-Barr. Number one, I have a very weird, it's only on the left side. I think it's a lymph node, but it's deep in my neck. And that one spot only hurts when I'm in an Epstein-Barr flare. It used to hurt every day of my life before I knew it was Epstein-Barr. Goes away completely when my virus is calm. Only comes
Wow.
back when I have an Epstein-Barr flare. So if I wake up and my neck hurts, I'm putting myself back on my protocols immediately.
Mhm.
My hands never hurt unless it's Epstein-Barr. Now I'll have some other things that are sore here and there, but that that joint pain is very just specific to Epstein-Barr for me. And then inability to handle my anxiety. I've gotten really good. I have tons of tools. I can keep it well managed. If my anxiety rears its head and I feel like my go-to tools aren't helping, I know my body's signaling to me that it's in danger and my virus is reactivating. So I know those three things. And the second they happen, I don't even wait to see like, are they going to get worse? Like if I have a day or two that any of those three things are happening, I'm putting
Yep.
myself immediately back at my protocols, which allows me now, not only do I have very few of them, the last time I had a flare was Christmas of last year because we were in a moldy rental house and like I knew it. As soon as we got there, I was like, oh crap. And so I did all my things. So it does still happen, but now because I get on top of it so quickly, my flares are 3, 4 days. They're not weeks, they're not
Wow.
months, they're not like this
Yeah.
long drawn out thing where they were, right, for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think that's what you're working towards. You'll have a whole lot less of them. You'll know what to do, and then you can really minimize how long you feel like that and you'll start feeling yourself come out of it within 1, 2 weeks instead of years and decades for a lot of people. So I think that's
Yeah.
really important. Know your triggers, know environmental reasons why you need to be under more support, and then know your symptoms. And then have your process. I have several videos on Instagram. It's what I teach inside my Epstein-Barr deep dive program. For me, there's three main things. Now, there's a lot more. Each person's a little bit individualized, so this can change. The
Sure.
absolute first thing I do is start back on my Epstein-Barr supplement support, right? So doing a good combination of immune support that's viral specific. I'm a really big fan of a combination of monolaurin and lysine. I never do not have that on hand at home because I never want to get to a point where I feel like I have to add it in and I have to wait or I have to order it or I don't have it. Like that is something that I
Yeah.
constantly have at least a week or two supply at all times because the quicker I can add that in, the more chance my body's going to have of just deactivating it before it becomes an issue. So having your go-to supplementation is huge. Number two, you have to calm your nervous system. I think this is a piece that a lot of people don't take as seriously. And inside any of
Yeah.
our like one-on-one coaching or programs, like I harp on nervous system regulation so much because I absolutely know without a doubt my worst flares come when I let stress impact my immune system. Like just hands down,
Yeah.
that's when they're always the worst. So having some tools, and again, everyone likes different things, but I know I have my very specific like somatic exercises, I have my mindset tools. And if I feel like I'm going into a flare, I double down on them. Like I will spend an extra 20 minutes morning and night. I will like my husband knows like I would block off time. Like if I don't get to this immediately over the next couple of days and I let this stress flare me up, it's
Mhm.
bad. Like both of us are going to suffer, right? Like he doesn't want it either. So he knows like there's just times that I need a solid hour, like 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night, and make sure
Yeah.
that my nervous system stays calm. I think that's something that we miss a lot. Really, really important. And then I go back to my antiviral food plans. There's stuff that when I'm feeling good, I have a little bit more of, or I'm able to not be so strict all the time. But if I am not feeling well, and if I think I'm going into a flare, I immediately go back to what I know my body does best with, which is cutting out foods that can potentially speed up the replication of viruses. Some of those big ones being no eggs, zero eggs if you feel like you're in a flare. Gluten for sure. I don't do well with gluten generally, but I'll maybe
Yeah.
sometimes a little bit creep in. If I'm in a flare, it's zero. We want to make sure we're doing a lot of good high antioxidant foods, like that helps really minimize the viral replication. So I just have some specific things. I get really strict again with my nutrition if I feel like I'm going in a flare. And then just depending on other things going on in life, right? If I'm having hormone fluctuation, or sometimes I'll bring in different tools for those. But those are my three go-tos. You need to have the right supplementation. You absolutely need to know how to regulate your nervous system. And then you have to have your go to food plan that you know this is a time I don't get to cheat. I don't get to go off book because I really need to be like properly supported and
Yeah.
rein it in until you come through those symptoms.
Which makes sense because the body, I feel like we all of us do way too much than I feel like we were ever meant to really do.
Yeah.
Like just everything with like internet and social media and just like, I feel like we're being pulled in 20 different directions at once, whether you want to be or not. And so nervous system regulation, well, stress, anxiety, when you're constantly living in fight or flight, you're bound to have something take over.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I love that. Yeah, monolaurin and lysine. That is something my mom's like, "Oh, I had that from when COVID was going on and your dad kept getting COVID." I'm like, never even heard of this.
Yeah.
I mean, now I have, but when I brought it up to my mom, she's like, "Oh yeah, like I have that in the pantry right now." And I'm like, "Oh." But yeah, I feel like that's probably good for any virus, right? Is monolaurin and lysine, and it's the combination that you would want, right?
Yeah, you need them together. They work synergistically. So the monolaurin dissolves. One of the hardest things about viruses is they have that lipid, that fat envelope that really doesn't get destroyed by very many things. So you can take lysine all day long, you can do herbs all day long. If you don't get inside that envelope, you're really not getting the benefits. The monolaurin does the best job of opening that up so the lysine can get in and actually work on the virus. So separately, you'll get minimal results. Together
Yeah,
really matters. And then adding some immune support on the other side, right? Because the immune system gets tired. Those are pretty viral specific, but they don't really boost
yeah,
immune function as much. Not necessarily boost immune function, just support immune function. You don't always need to be stimulating your immune system either, but just really supporting, not allowing to get immune fatigue, which is a very real thing. And when that happens, you're much more prone to having those reactivations.
yeah. And now for someone like how you're in a flare, how do you know that you're not in a flare anymore? So you start doing these protocols, like do you kind of just have then like signs that your body tells you that you're better? The anxiety goes away, you feel calmer, or how do you know?
Especially the first time or 2 someone's dealing with their Epstein-Barr. I'm a big fan of, like, journal everything because you don't know what you're gonna look back on and be like, "Dang, that was the thing? Like, really?"
Yeah.
So, if you can have a good comprehensive list of, like, "Here's all the things that I'm feeling right now," even the weird things, right? That weird buzzing, that crazy dizziness, I get kinda like black flurries in my eyes, like, whatever it is. Like, I've heard so many different potential things it could be. List all those out. And normally, the ones that start going away and you kinda look back and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I haven't had that in a couple weeks or 2." And, again, unfortunately, I hate that it's the case, but it's the case. You're gonna have a flare, right? You're gonna have a flare at some point, and when
Yeah.
you look back at that list and you're like, "Oh, those 3 things were gone, and now they're back, and now I'm feeling like I'm exhausted and these other things are coming up." I think that's how my body talks to me. And then you kinda note that, and then the next time it happens, hopefully not for months or years later, but it will happen again, and then you'll be like, "It was the same 3 things. It was the same 2 things." Like, you just have to kind of go through
Wow.
process of elimination, but you will
Yeah.
have, and what I call them is, like, you have your pre-warning triggers, which again, for me, it's like before I feel horrible. Like, it's not, I know when I feel horrible, I'm exhausted, I can't sleep, I get migraines, like, I know what my full-blown flares feel like. I
Yep.
wanna know the step before that, right? And for me, that's
Yep.
the joints, that's my neck. So, what are your signals that are, like, the precursor to the full-blown flare? And those
Yep.
just take a little bit of investigation, but it's kinda fun. Like, you do it, you look back, and then, like, when you figure them out, it's like, "Ah, now I get it."
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like, I mean, for a woman, it's like knowing when your period's gonna come.
Yes.
Like you just have the symptoms. You're like, okay, I'll probably be getting it any day. And then so when you're talking about it, it's kind of what I think of, like
Yep.
almost like knowing when your period's gonna come. For you, like when you said your numbers were super high, like when you did those 4, you ran the 4 different tests for Epstein-Barr, um, did you retest, like, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months,
Mm.
have you retested it to see that what you were doing was working and to see those numbers coming down?
So that's a really good point. So the unfortunate thing with some Epstein-Barr titers is when they're built up, like, people always want to see, like, I had high titers and now I don't. That's not always what we're looking for. Now, stabilization and a little bit of reduction. And again, remembering there's 4 different titers. This answer isn't the same for all of them. If you have an IgM, yes, we want them to deactivate. If you have an early antigen, absolutely those can go down. But the 2 chronic titers, which are called your VCA IgG and your nuclear antigen, for example, the very first time I did my labs, all I got was the greater than symbol and
Yep.
750. So I don't even know where I started. Was I at 1,000? Was I at
Wow.
1,200? Was I at, and for a lot of people, that's the case. Other people will have like 600, or they'll have these really, really high numbers that have built up, again, in my case, for 20 years or more that I didn't know about. So expecting to go from let's say I started at 800 to a 100, that's unrealistic. The body's not going to clear a buildup of titers, but that doesn't have to happen for you to be healthy either, right? I think that's what people have to
Yep.
understand is they don't have to drop by 500 points for you to be healthy. What we need to see happen is they stop going up, because every time you reactivate and you replicate, they go up. So as long as they're not getting higher and they stabilize, right? Most people will see a 50 point or 100 point, sometimes more, but that's not for your chronic titers. That's not the be all end all. That's not what we're looking for. We want to make
Okay.
sure that we've deactivated, we've stopped replication, your immune system is calm enough that you can handle and prevent flares. That's the goal. And you can still be healthy with higher titers. The early antigen and the IgM, absolutely, we need to see those go back to normal. I think people sometimes can get frustrated when they retest their Epstein-Barr and they're like, well, it's still high. Yeah, you did have a past infection. Those ones are always going to be high. That's not the number one thing we need. So that's a good question. But I think, again, you need to know all 4 titers. You need to know where you started and then just be able to track to make sure your body is stable,
Yeah.
not that they go away.
Yeah. And out of one of those, it does show if you're active, right? Currently.
Correct.
So when you are in remission, will that show inactive?
Correct. So
Okay.
IgM and early antigen can go in, and that's where you know that you're not in a current flare, you're not in a
Got
reactivation,
it.
you're not in active mono, and that's ideally where we want to be, with the other numbers staying nice and stable, not continuing decline.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild. Um, as far as like how you feel like once you got it under control, I know you mentioned in your Instagram, like some of your posts, like your kids even noticed a change in you. Like what did that feel like when you finally were able to be like, you, like you said, you cried when you figured out, okay, this is what it is. But B, like, when you really started feeling like your body was healing, like, what were the emotions that you felt?
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a huge sense of relief. Now, to be honest, like there for the first couple of years, there was a lot of guilt. There was a lot of like, I should have done this sooner, or like all the things, like putting my family through what we went through for those years. Like that was very heavy on me. But then getting to watch, and somebody told me that this once, they're like, yes, but your son, and I'll still cry thinking about it. Like it's heavy, right? If anyone else has been through this, it's a lot. Like having him be part of both sides of my life. Like he was part of the first years where it was really bad, but then seeing how much effort I put in and consistency, and even to this day, how I take care of myself, right? And prioritize self-care. And like he's learning those lessons and taking care of himself in the same way, right? Seeing that resilience,
Yeah.
seeing that the body can heal. So I think there's a big part of that. But just like this past week, we were on vacation and I felt like I got to do all the things with my kids. Like I was the mom who was like running around and playing tag with them. And like my daughter and I were spinning circles. And like I went scuba diving with my son and like things that like a few years ago I wouldn't have been able to do. And I was watching other families and like we were just kind of talking about it. And Justin's like, look how many other moms in particular, but parents, like they're not jumping in with their kids. And like again, there's a lot of reasons that could be, but I feel like
For
a lot
sure.
more because they don't feel good, right? They're exhausted, they're inflamed, they just wanna sit on the chair and zone out and scroll their phone because they feel like crap all the time, and I was there for a long time, like, I think just that comparison of, like, I would have been that mom several years ago to
Yeah.
having these, like, very cool, like, videos and moments and memories that they're always gonna remember because I got to be part of every second of this trip.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think that really, for me, is that's what it's all about, right? Like, that's why we do this.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And like just being present,
Yeah.
like not feeling, like you said, zoned out. Yeah, just trying to be in survival mode. As far as I have a question around red light therapy because that's like a big thing. You see it everywhere, the loom box, the red light, and, people do it on their faces or people claim to do it on like their gut or different parts of their body. What do you think about red light therapy? And do you think that it can work? I don't know that it can necessarily work for Epstein-Barr, but if someone's in like a flare up and like how you had like neck pain, like, do you think it's beneficial?
100%. Love it, actually. Now, there are some people early on in especially if they're in an active Epstein-Barr, sometimes they can because it does help stimulate immune response. I've had a few people be like, "That felt like too much for me right now." If that's you and you're using stuff, it might just be too early in your journey, but I think at some
Yep.
point, most people can absolutely add it in. And at first, it is maybe a little bit more for symptom relief, right? Is there pain? Is there inflammation? And then you can target it more on healing because if you do know your Epstein-Barr was more, a thyroid issue for you, there's lots of settings that are great for that. Liver, I mean, our liver gets beaten up so much through Epstein-Barr, is like
Yeah.
just getting some stimulation there. So I think there's lots of beautiful benefits. Most people tolerated it just fine. If you try it and you don't, you probably just used it a little bit too early or trying to go a little bit too gung-ho with it. But I do think there's a lot. It's a great adjunct, right? So I talk a lot about that too, is I have my go-to protocols, but there's lots of things I love to do in addition to help maintain red light's one of them. I love ozone
Yep.
therapy. I love PMF mats. Like there's just things that I add in later on. I think a lot of
Yep.
that, it just has to be an adjunct with your other things.
Yeah, definitely. Where do you think the best place for someone to go to learn about Epstein-Barr or to learn about how they can work with you and just like all the knowledge that you share? What's like the best platform? I mean, I follow you on Instagram and I feel like you put a lot on there, but you mentioned YouTube as well.
So I do a ton. You're going to be able to find all kinds of stuff. But if you go to my Instagram profile in my bio to my link tree, I have an entire hour-long Epstein-Barr webinar that's just on demand. You can watch that at any point. I go through, so I share labs, I show what they look like, I show the numbers. Like it's a pretty deep dive educational piece for Epstein-Barr. I think if you're someone who really wants to learn, go watch the webinar. I share tons just on social media, definitely. And then if you're looking for an easy place to start, I have it's called my Epstein-Barr Deep Dive program. It's an Epstein-Barr group program. It's super affordable. I wanted it to be something that people could have an easy yes for. But we go through in the course of 6 weeks all the things. We do lifestyle modification, we add the supplements, we do nutrition changes. I teach nervous system and mindset work. It is everything I wish I would have had 20 years ago, just helping someone walk through. And what we teach in those 6 weeks is going to be your flare protocol the rest of your life. Like, this is what you will do ongoing anytime that you need it. So I think that's a
Yeah.
valuable, just like next step for someone who wants to get started working on it. So,
Yeah.
webinar if you just want education, deep dive program if you're ready to start getting some movement.
Okay, so deep dive would be like that they know they have Epstein-Barr, or when they do deep dive, can they run labs like through you?
Yes, we can run the labs too. I tell somebody if you have an immune system issue and you have mystery symptoms, whether it's Epstein-Barr or not, the things that you're going to learn in there are going to benefit you. But most people, once they get started, they want the labs, and we can help them get any of that inside the program as well. So I have lots of people in there who they're not sure if it's Epstein-Barr. I have lots of people who it's just autoimmune specific and they want to walk through it. But it is designed primarily to be an Epstein-Barr program. But I also get lots of people with HSV1, HSV2, shingles, cytomegalovirus, like any chronic viruses. That's going to be a great resource.
Awesome, and you can help with, like, all those different viruses.
Yeah. Yep.
And then can you help anybody no matter where they're located?
Yep. So we work all over. Again, depending on what's going on, we can send resources. We do everything through telehealth. So there's no limitations for people being able to get most of the help, right? Sometimes there's supplements can't go one place or a test can't get sent somewhere. But for the most part, we can find resources that fit anybody wherever they are.
Awesome. Well, one last thing for those like for women that are listening or for moms, obviously this is primarily for moms. But obviously we might have just some women that, maybe they're trying to get pregnant and maybe they can't. And it could also be a reason why. Um, what would your advice be for somebody who is struggling and is just sitting with like unknown answers?
I believe with every cell of my being that there is a cause for every symptom and every complication. Like there really is. And it's up to you to not give up looking for that, right? Like, you will feel
Yeah.
like other people gave up on you. If there is something that you are struggling with, like, there is a reason, and it might take layers and pieces to figure it out. Maybe you don't get it all in one, even the first try, but work on something. Start there. Just start peeling back those layers and just keep moving in the next direction because you're gonna get to that breakthrough. It's different for everybody, but I think that's you get to a place where it can feel very hopeless. It can be very heavy. Like just take the next best step forward. And if you've not investigated Epstein-Barr, 100% just like really encourage you to at least look into it,
Yeah.
right? Like very potentially this could be your thing. Or if you haven't properly managed it, I get a lot of people who think they have it or know they have it, but really have never been given the tools to do anything about it. So just knowing you have it is great, but now you have to have these tools. So I just there's an answer. There always is. You just have to keep looking and keep investigating.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And like I said, I would have never known if I didn't go and look for more answers. And I didn't even when I was looking for answers, I didn't even know that was a thing. Kind of like how you mentioned, like you did not even select Epstein-Barr. It was just one of the labs that was drawn. And so, yeah, I am super passionate about this. I know you are, and I'm hoping that it will help, even if it helps one person go and figure out that, not that something's wrong, but helps get to the root cause and makes them feel better. That's my hope for this.
100%. Me
So,
too. Well, thank you for having me on. I love sharing this with
yeah,
people. If anyone has questions, they're welcome to
thank you.
DM me. It's really me in there answering the questions. So I'm always there for anyone who wants more information and just appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I so appreciate it.